Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Zainab Avni. I'm emotion and body code practitioner, and I mainly work with people suffering from chronic pain, chronic illness, and unexplained medical conditions. This podcast has really one message, and that is the message of hope for alternative healing. So please sit back, listen to the messages, to the stories, and I hope you find something that was meant for you. And with us today here is Sherianna Boyle. Sherianna, so lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Nice. So let's get started. Tell us something about you.
Well, I'm an author. I write books. I've written 10 books, and I'm also an adjunct psychology professor. I'm also an energy healer, and I've been in the field of mental health and spirituality for well over 20 years now, since the 90s, before it was a thing. And I
Nice.
just, yeah, so it just I yeah, that's what I do. That's how I spend my time working with clients and helping people and writing books.
Sounds like a very rewarding kind of time. But I really want to get started with this, as you say, way back then, right? Emotions and anxiety and mental health. It really wasn't you couldn't really talk about it without people, you know, trying to move to the across the road or move to the other side or trying to avoid it. What got you started and what was it like back then?
Well, like I said, it's been well over 20 years. I actually went to school for it. It wasn't like I had, well, we all come from our backgrounds of traumas and things that we went through in our own childhoods. And I'm sure that had some influence on me. But I just have always been fascinated with the field of psychology and spirituality. And so I studied it. I went to school for it. And then I ended up working in the school systems and I worked with parents, particularly moms that were going through drug addiction and things like that. I've taught a lot of parent education. And I've always kind of felt like it's interesting since way back then. I've always felt like we were kind of missing the boat in terms of, okay, we're giving people tools, coping skills, but if they don't know how to process their emotions, then those skills are likely to fall flat. It's like anything. They might not, it's like buying a piece of exercise equipment. Right? And you think, okay, great, they've got the stationary bike, that means they're going to use it. Well, not necessarily true, because if they have anxiety or depression or a lot of stress in their lives, guess what? That piece of equipment's going to sit in the corner and collect dust.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the way I felt. I always felt like I was skimming the surface and I wasn't really, especially with the children, I felt like I would work with the kids in school, but I wouldn't really have access to the parents until I started doing the night work and teaching parent education. But then there seemed to be a discrepancy between the two. I'm educating parents, but then the kids were, so it just felt like it was all very disconnected.
Mhm.
So it wasn't until I started really writing about emotions, and that's what I've been writing about since 2012.
Amazing. And emotions is such a tricky one because we all know about emotions and yet w- people seem to be divided. Some people scared of their emotions. Some people do too much of them. Some people, you know, everyone has their own way of dealing with emotions, either too much, too little, or yeah, something. So how do we go about understanding the emotions and how to deal with them, how to process them, and
Hmm.
what are some steps that we can look forward to understanding better?
Mhm. Well, I think what happens, and I understand because it happened to me as well, is I think we get a little confused because in school we're taught about kind of the primary emotions, what they look like on someone's face. And we're not really taught about much how they feel. Maybe we say tightness or redness in the face or something like that. But it doesn't really go that much deeper. And the other thing is now we have these influences. So now it's even hard to tell because we text, there's social media, there's filters, there's all sorts of things that are really, the old ways of looking at body language and all of that are kind of gone. So what's left over? Well, energy's left over. That means we have to learn a new skill set for learning about our emotions. And that's my latest book is called Energy in Action. I mean, emotions in Latin means to move. Energy and movement. And so we need to start expanding the way we understand it. Now, some of you mentioned when some people feel a lot, some people feel a little, some people don't feel at all. Well, here's the tricky part. Some of what I think that is not emotions. In fact, I think it's reactions. I think we all react differently. In terms of feeling, we're actually very much alike. When you experience energy and the emotions as energy and motions, energy and action, I find in the work that I do, especially the group work, that is we're very similar. And that's where through those similarities is where we can get a sense of harmony and a sense of cohesiveness and a sense of connection and safety. It's going to be through the movement of energy. In terms of how I react and someone else reacts, that's a different category. Well, that's what's going to move us apart. That's where we're going to see each other as a threat or different or too much or toxic. And that's when things can really get ugly and hurtful. And then we lose our sense of resiliency and our unity. And we're seeing that all the time. So I think we have to relearn emotions as energy in action, and literally see it that when they are not in movement, we suffer.
So do I understand correctly? If I'm thinking back to some people, clients that I know, so I noticed that some people really made a decision that they don't do emotions. So are you saying that they feel the emotions, they just don't react to it, they just don't bring it to the surface? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, if they don't do emotions, they've decided to hide or suppress or bury, put your game face on kind of thing. And maybe they associate that with strength, which is another common way that we're conditioned, that emotional means we're weak or not as strong or stable. And maybe perhaps that's why they're making that choice, because they don't want to be viewed as a weak point or insecure, and they're worried. So that's not those people. The challenge is, and I talk about this in Energy in Action, is regardless of what you choose, it's going to manifest, kind of speaking to what you do and how you help people, and you know this more than anyone, that unexpressed, unrepressed, suppressed emotions will manifest in some way if they're not allowed, permitted to be processed, if they're not allowed to be moved. I mean, that's my definition of anxiety. One of my books is called Emotional Detox for Anxiety. I wrote the Emotional Detox series. Energy in Action is the latest book that I keep referring to. But the way I define anxiety is an emotion looking to be processed, but can't because you won't let it. So just because I have my game face on doesn't mean I don't suffer from anxiety. Doesn't mean I don't sit up at night worrying. Doesn't mean I don't experience headaches or tension or poor sleep or chronic pain in some way. So again, I define anxiety as an emotion that's looking to be processed, but can't because we won't let it.
So anxiety is also something that I definitely want to understand a little bit more about. So for example, I have another client, and she is constantly on edge because she's constantly feeling the anxiety. what do I understand from that? Because, like you say, it's emotion that is just there. It's nearly bursting. How? What
Yeah.
does that mean? What's going on there?
So you're saying it's chronic and it's pretty high levels, and we do have different ranges of everything. So we have high anxiety, and I mean, there's a lot of contributions to anxiety. There isn't emotions is one of them. That's the part I talk about. There could be something. I know somebody who has high anxiety, excuse me, and they realized later that during an earlier accident that they had years earlier, that they had their brainstem was influenced, which contains your vagus nerve. And it's like the vagus nerve was continually suppressed, tight, and they didn't know what to do. So sometimes it's a physical thing or diet and things like that, but I'll just speak to the emotional part. And that's where I mean, of course, any of the process, but I think the main thing is we have to learn, and that's what I teach, how to identify our emotions, how to recognize them without rehashing the stories.
Hmm.
And a lot of times that high anxiety means there's just this real story. It feels like a song that just won't that just keeps playing. And so it's kind of locked in there. And so they have to learn. Well, number one, the first step that I always teach, so I have a system called Cleanse. It's in the last 4 books I've written. It's the same system. And it's basically the system for 7 steps. It's an acronym for processing your emotions. So it starts at the C and it ends at the E every time. It takes about 10 minutes to go through the system. There's 52 of them in energy and action. So I wrote out the steps so people can literally sit and read it out loud. And so your friend, or your client, what I would do is just, again, start at that step 1. And it feels like when someone's that high, it's kind of like having no energy in the tank.
Hmm.
So when there's no energy in the body, and I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about energy from food, talking about awareness and consciousness, which we get energy by being in the present moment. And so if they're running high levels of anxiety, it tells me that they're either in the past or they're in the future. They're anything but the present moment. So I would start at the C with them, and I would take them through the E. Now, what's nice about the Cleanse as an acronym is it's consistent. And people with high anxiety or any level of anxiety, they like to know what's up ahead. They like consistency. They don't do well with, okay, today we're going to try this and see if it works, right? That actually gives them anxiety. They like to know, okay, this is the plan. This is where we're heading. Here's why it works. Here's how it can help you. So they need to understand, okay, well, why is it I'm doing this, right? Is it going to? And so that's where I explain all the steps in the book. And then they need to be taken through the steps so they're not left to figure it out on their own, because they're probably not going to do that if their anxiety levels are high, or they're going to give up midway or get discouraged. So I would walk that client through those steps.
Hmm.
And then at the end, let them kind of give some feedback on how they feel, not what they think. But within those steps, the C, they learn how to identify their emotions without reliving the story. And within the Cleanse, what they're doing is they're increasing energy in their body. As energy goes up, thoughts go down. So
Hmm.
as energy goes down, thoughts escalate. So we want to increase the movement back to energy and action of the energy in the body, take them through a 10-minute experience process, which is the Cleanse. And 10 minutes is plenty, because more than that might be too much with someone with anxiety. And give them a chance to digest it, because they're not used to digesting anything, because to digest means you have to be in the moment. And they're used to not being in the moment. So that's kind of a little bit about how I would handle someone like that.
So the cleanse is something that you would, is it just for anxiety, or will you use it for other things as
Well,
well?
I've written in the last 4 books. So I have a book called Emotional Detox for Anxiety, which has the cleanse in there. So the cleanse is the process, 7-step process for learning how to process your emotions. So you
Mhm.
start again at the C and you end at the E. And then I have it in Energy in Action. Energy in Action is going to be focusing more on the spiritual laws of the universe. So a lot of people think about the laws, they think about them as manifesting. They look at the old, law of attraction in the movie The Secret, and let me focus on da da da. And I actually, after looking at the laws, and they're thousands and thousands of years old, I think, this is my view, I think they teach us about energy. And I think they're a guidance system for moving the energy of our emotions. And so what I do is I go through all the spiritual laws. There's 13 of them in the book. There's more than that, but I go through 13, and I show people how these laws teach us how to move our emotional energy. And then within each law, I provide a practice, several practices. So you read about it, you understand it, and then you go through an actual cleanse practice and process your emotions. And then you get a sense of, oh my gosh, because the reality is we're so much more than these bodies. We're so much more than these brains. And when we feel disconnected from the bigger part of ourselves, which is our spirit, yeah, we're going to feel anxiety. There's no doubt about it, because it's like having half of you. Right? You're not just that, and you feel powerless. Well, yeah, you feel powerless because you're not connected to the whole of who you are. So that's okay. We can get reconnected, but it is going to be through processing your emotions.
So how do people know to go through to get started with all of that? Because like we said, some people are at the extreme, so they either don't do emotions or they do too many of them, or some of them, like we said, maybe they're scared of their emotions. But how do people that are more in the middle, how do they know that they should learn about the process and to understand more about the emotions and the energy and all of that? What where do they start their
Well,
journey?
I guess I would ask yourself this: what happens after I process an emotion? How does that feel? Are you able to notice? Are you able to describe what it feels like to process an emotion? And if you don't know, then it might be a good idea to get to know that, right? I mean, that's a great place to start. I mean, if I don't even know what it feels like, then I'm more likely to miss the mark. I'm more likely to oversee it. Now, you might know if perhaps you go for a walk in the woods, or you go out in nature, which can all of a sudden we're more present, we're in the moment, we're not thinking as much, we can feel our energy, our vibration going up. That feels great. And the challenge is sometimes people return to their lives and naturally they get triggered, or they get it's like a habit. And our brain does run like a habit, right? The way
Mm.
the neurons run. So what the cleanse does is it includes practices that we know can change the brain. We know we can do that. We can change the circuitry of the brain. We can increase certain neurotransmitters through mindful approaches. So it is, energy is a funny thing. Energy will always resort back to the pattern. It's like a pathway that you mow, and you're like, okay, here's the pathway. But if you don't keep tending to that pathway, it's going to grow in. And then before you know it, you're like, where's the pathway? Oh, I don't know. Is this it? Is this it? Well, that's what happens with the brain. You have to be consistent. You want to have it in your daily life. And then adding in other things such as going for walks or being in nature and drinking water and all of that also help move energy in the body.
Right. So you said that, when you asked that question of how do I know or how do I feel when I process an emotion, and I'm not sure that many of us would actually know how to answer that question.
I can
Can you?
confidently because I do it. That's all I do is cleanse. And I'm
Yeah,
going to tell you, it feels freaking awesome.
that sounds good. That
It
sounds
feels
good.
fantastic.
But can you give us an example of how? Because
It feels calming. It feels grounding. It feels a sense of you feel peaceful.
so I'll give you an example. Um, with my daughter, for example. So sometimes we drive somewhere and she says, "I'm nervous." Like that's something that she's going through, and I'm nervous, and I'm like, "What are you nervous about?" Maybe the most unhelpful question, but that's the one that comes up,
Oh,
and she's
yeah.
like, "I don't know."
There's never an unhelpful question, not if it comes from the heart.
Yeah, but it definitely, yeah, definitely trying to help, but she never knows.
Yeah,
And then then we basically say, okay, well, let's connect with the notion of being in the moment, knowing that it would be okay, and trying to not get into the habit of feeling nervous and not getting into that pattern of what that makes how to feel it, because it goes into the body, right, into the physical sensation. So
sure.
what is what is how do I use the cleanse, or how do I help her or myself, but
Yeah.
both of us in the conversation to actually look at it differently? How can I help her process the emotion?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think it's always a good idea to teach ourselves first because, again, then you're not just throwing, things in the darts, aiming and not knowing, is this working? Is it not? And then what can happen is someone can feel like you're trying to fix them or manage them. And so sometimes in those situations where we're in a car, it's difficult to be like, okay, let's pull over and cleanse. She's probably going to be like, you're nuts, right? Like, especially our own kids. So I think in those moments where we're on the go, it's always best to just listen and you get to know your child's temperament, meaning what do they need? And I'm sure you have a sense of what works for her, whether she just needs to be heard, whether she needs space, whether she needs some reassurance. I mean, there is some level of anxiety, but in terms of the cleanse, so it's your daughter, and you're saying when you go places, she gets nervous just by going outside of like her regular places. Are we talking like a trip? Or are we talking like day to day stuff?
It can be anything really, like going into town or
So
maybe
she has anxiety. So transitions are difficult for her.
Mhm.
Right. So so that's the first thing is I'm just writing stuff down because that's how I also process energy is so it's about transitions. Okay. And and she doesn't identify anything. So the first thing we would do is we do the first step of the cleanse, which is all about, it's called clear reactivity. And I know you asked how to help her, but if you just take your head right now and you just kind of tilt your head side to side, even just talking about your daughter, sometimes you can feel that angst come in, right? Because we're so connected and we feel when, it's like we can mirror that back to them. So energy is contagious. Unfortunately, emotions are contagious. This is well documented in research. So if I'm feeling tension because I hear my daughter, and I have 3 daughters, so I know, say I'm nervous about going into town, the first thing I want to do to help her and you is you want to maybe loosen up a little bit in your body, because you want to let the body know it's okay, right? Because the body, if it gets tight, it's a signal to the brain that there's a threat, there's danger. So I would just kind of loosen up, whether it's taking a breath. And that's what we do in the first step of the cleanse. Now, in terms of, and then I would feel your energy move. And I want you to know that, and I've got 3 daughters. They've all gone through their levels of anxiety. I don't try to be their therapist. I do hire therapists to do that. I don't try to, they know the cleanse. They're familiar with the cleanse. I do more through modeling. So for example, I have a group that I run on Tuesday evenings where I walk everybody through the cleanse in the group. And it's a guided cleanse. Every Tuesday night, it's only 30 minutes. And one of my daughters sits in the other room a lot. She can hear me with my group. And I was leaving and I said, you're always welcome to come. I won't charge you. I kid with her. I won't charge you. You can come for free. And for the first time the other day, she was like, yeah, I think I will come next week. But it's because I kept it light, for one. When you process your emotions, so I'm in doing the cleanse with this group, what happens is you land lightly on people. Your energy's moving, right? You can keep things light and they feel that. And there's no attachment to results or anything like that. So she kind of, through sort of osmosis, now whether she comes or not, I don't know if that will happen, but she's interested. And that tells me her energy is going up. Just her being curious, I want to celebrate that. Just her, these little bit of milestones. So in case with your daughter, what I would do is I would go learn the cleanse yourself and learn how to bring your energy up so that you're not reflecting, there's not tight and tight, right? Because if we have tight and tight on a car ride, then we build a memory. Every time I get in this car, I feel tight. And she's associating that with it's not a good experience for her. So we have to lighten it up. Maybe those car rides, those transitions, maybe she needs more transition time, or perhaps a little pit stop on the way or something like that to make it a more positive, lighthearted experience. I have a homeschooler. My last daughter, I homeschool. And so, a lot of times we'll just kind of get out together and hang out, and there's no agenda. And so our transition is just whatever, right? We're not like, oh, we got to get somewhere. We got to do. It's just like, hey, let's just take a little ride, let's just take a little ride. See, and so keeping it so that their expectations go down a little bit. And I don't know the full story, but I think I would probably have you cleanse first.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tap into spirit and ask what's going on with her for sure. I mean, I do that. That's another thing I do in my groups.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that later.
Well, the only thing I'm feeling when I do tap into the energy, and this is an energy in action, it's the spiritual law of cause and effect. So again, she's associating whatever this is. It's her thoughts are having an effect on the experience, right? Whether they're true or not. And maybe you could just tell her, most of your thoughts are not true.
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, most of our thoughts are triggers. They're not true at all.
I like how you said that, actually. I think that's a very strong sentence. Yeah.
They're really not. If it doesn't come from the heart, then it's not true. If it doesn't come from feeling, and thinking is not feeling, then it's not true. I mean, I have a lot of empathy for young folks because they're so on their phones and they're getting slammed. Whereas, they might not have as much self-control or self-discipline. And I've had many clients that are younger, I don't know how old your daughter is, who have chosen themselves as their energy goes up from emotional processing through the cleanse. They've made their own decisions to limit their phone, and in some cases get rid of apps. And they have said what a huge difference is made on their anxiety not being on that phone so much.
Yeah, I understand that. But can you tell me a little bit more about the some examples, or just something that you might want to share about the 13 laws of the universe and the energy? It sounds like it's so fascinating to me to the connection that you're making with the laws and the energy, and how it comes about. How
Okay, so I'll give you an example using your daughter. So, in the Energy in Action, the book I'm referring to, again, there's 52 practices. That's
Mhm.
the cleanse. With the spiritual law of cause and effect, it basically says, every thought we have, behaviors, I mean, they do have an effect, right? They do. There is a cause and effect thing. And when I was writing this book, I was guided to incorporate into the cleanse something called the rays of light. Rays of light are basically high vibrational energy, and they're overseen by ascended masters and archangels. And so they're pure, they're from source energy, God, source, creator, whatever they are. And when I was writing Energy in Action, I was guided to sort of infuse this in. And what are the benefits of that? Well, if I said to your daughter, tell me how you feel, she probably wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Mm.
She'd probably shrug it off or whatever, kind of, and that's just blocking it. And a lot of people don't talk about the way they feel, because they're afraid, they're afraid that if they even start, they're not going to stop, or they're going to fall apart or something, right? And so what I love about these particular cleanses and Energy in Action is they have this light infused in them. And so if I said to your daughter, okay, I want you to connect to what I call an orange ray of light. Orange ray of light. So you go ahead and try it now. Say connect, imagine, and your audience, imagine connecting to an orange ray of light. And imagine that like the sun, and it's over the crown of your head, and it's coming through you like the rays of the sun. Orange coming right through your body, all the way down like a light bath. And tell me, and I don't know what your daughter's name, I'll just tell me so and so what you feel. And I guarantee she could answer my question.
Yeah,
I guarantee she'd say,
yeah.
I feel calm. I feel calm. And I would say, congratulations. Welcome to the world of feeling. Not so bad, is it?
That's a very interesting exercise, and it's so interesting how it's so instant, because you can really shift from out of
It's
your head and into your.
And then there's steps that follow that anchor it, because tapping into it, it's wonderful, but you got to anchor it. And that's what the rest of the cleanse do. So that's a little snippet of what it's like with Energy in Action. So yes, she could absolutely tell me that, and that would free her, because she's limited right now. Her scope is limited. And when we feel limited, or like we're in a box, that's, for lack of a better word, that really sucks, right? It just makes you feel like you're stuck, right? You can't get out of your own way. And of course, that's going to lead to stories like, I'm a loser, or whatever it is. And then they isolate. I mean, that's our fear with our children, is we don't want them isolating because they don't know how to function in their body. She's probably a wicked empath. She probably picks up every single piece of energy around her, and it's very, very real. She doesn't have the knowledge of how to take care of that, but I will tell you, the cleanses and energy in action will teach her how to do that.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. Thank you for that, and thank you for writing it. I just want to say, I mean, we're nearly coming to the end of our conversation, but I just want to most specifically to just spend a few minutes to talk about emotions and chronic pain and illnesses. As you said, if you don't process it, the emotions will manifest, as pain or something in the body. But to our listeners that are suffering from chronic issues, what is something that they can already do to start processing emotions, to start seeing how it is all connected together?
So the chronic for chronic pain, well, first thing I would do is I would remove the word chronic, right? Because we have to be, we don't want to keep it around, right? So then that leaves us with pain,
Hmm.
right? So then it's the question of, well, how do I, how do I perhaps decrease the pain or reduce the pain, right? And so then we kind of go there. Okay, so now we brought it down to pain. And let's just see. I just got to take a breath on this one just because it's chronic. I would really work with the practices in energy and action with the green ray of light. The green ray of light's very healing. It is very much kind of like an anti-inflammatory from a light level. It will help speed up the healing. So it's all about inflammation. So when emotions don't get processed,
Hmm.
they're anatomically will create inflammation in the body because they influence blood flow and circulation. So again, you're going to take the word chronic and you're going to put that, say, okay, we're not going to focus on that anymore because that means forever, right?
Right.
So then we're just going to say, okay, well, there's pain. And you know what I encourage them to do? Let's take it down another notch. And would they be willing to, instead of referring to it as pain, refer to it as tension?
Hmm.
And then that in itself, I feel, is going to give a little bit of movement of energy in action. So if you can start to refer to it as tension and then focus on really kind of taking in, let me just see if there's another layer here. So there's tension. There is another layer. Let's drop it down. And I'd like those of you to drop it down to discomfort. How does that feel? So we went from chronic pain to tension to discomfort.
Even without the pain, I felt it. I definitely felt that it was definitely, it
Feel the
feels,
energy move? You felt the energy move? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's all that counts. Congratulations. You just felt something. And you're still alive to tell about it.
Yeah, I do like that actually. It sounds like there's so much, to explore here, and I really like how you say it's, energy in motion or in action, and even just this little exercise really shows how you can open up some of the emotions that you may have around the way that you feel, like
Yeah.
for example with the pain. It
If
really
I
does.
were to tease that discomfort down again, you know what I would get? This is what I'm intuitively getting: sadness.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, you got movement. Good. Congratulations. A little bit more.
Yes.
Okay. It's all it's it it's all man. You can do it. I mean, you can move this energy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think I think you're totally right. When you think about it as sadness, all of a sudden you're looking at it at completely different level,
It's
completely different
sadness.
way. Yeah.
Okay, then we have sadness,
Yeah.
right?
Sadness is not a chronic pain.
Can we give that sadness some permission to move? Can we let
And
it move? Right? Do we have to keep bearing it with these labels?
mhm.
Can we lift those labels long enough to give it some movement?
Sounds like a very intriguing exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess here is my recommendation for anyone listening to go and get the book and do the exercise and report back on how your emotions are moving and what is it that you're noticing, because I'm sure there would be a lot of change or difference in how people are feeling the emotions and the sensations in the body. Well, I'm definitely going to get the book and go through it and learn more about how to move energy and emotion.
I
Uh,
appreciate that.
Thank you, Sherianna. It's been such a pleasure to have you on this podcast today, and thank you so much for sharing all of this. There's a lot of things, a lot of wisdom here to get back to and to listen again and reflect and to move forward. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing with us today.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.